Welcome back to the Devy Hour. We missed y'all last week. I apologize. I was a little bit under the weather, so we need to take a minute and sit back and rest up. But we are back, and tonight we are going to have some fun. I know the 2022 draft is just 13 days away, a little over 13 days away. But we're going to look ahead to the 2023 draft class. We're going to talk about some names that you guys may want to have on your radar if you don't already. Not everybody is a Devy degenerate like the two of us and the team here at Roto Heat, so y'all may not be thinking about ahead that far. But we're gonna drop some names on you, get some guys going, and chop it up tonight. Just see where the conversation. Daz, how you doing tonight, brother? How are you, man?
I'm good, man. I can't complain. I'm glad to be on here and talk some Devy. Just like you said, we missed what was it last week, and then I missed the week before due to some personal situation. But yeah, man, glad to be back on here and the 23 class. Why not talk about it? There was a lot of excitement about that these last couple of months and things like that. And let's see how it stacks up against the 22 class because the draft is coming up in a few weeks. So I know everybody's really excited about that, but the 23 class is right there, so why not jump on it early?
And it's funny with the 22 class, everybody's downplaying the value at quarterback and running back, but wide receivers super strong. 23 class is considerably different. The
Mhm.
quarterback class projects to be very strong. The running back class projects to be. When I was combing the internet looking at different people's mock drafts that are looking ahead, people are projecting multiple running backs to be first round graded running backs in the next year's class. Bijan Robinson, Zach Evans, and some of these big name guys. And it's like, wow, like next year's draft is going to be considerably more intriguing for positions that are not intriguing at all this year. What's your feeling looking to 2023? Do you think that same way that it could be a really bounce back year for running back and quarterback?
Running back, maybe, because it's definitely you want to say maybe somewhat top heavy. You have Bijan, you have Jamir, just like you said, Zach Evans, you have even Sean Tucker sliding
Mhm.
in there too. He's a sneaky guy, and I'm pretty sure there's a couple other guys we can address as well. But like as far as yeah, definitely running back, you could be excited about that if you have some first round picks to build on, and if you're lacking at running back, definitely quarterbacks. It's a wait and see for me. I really do. CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. The other ones I have to wait. Of course, Spencer Rattler, he can have a bounce back because prior to this year, last year, he was one of the top Devy picks if you were going to be doing a startup, super flex, or one QB because he was potentially supposed to be coming out this year. They were thinking he should have been a number one pick. He should be one of the guys that should be talked about as a top 5 or top 10 pick this draft, but he had a down year. And you have Caleb Williams coming in there and kind of taking over the role. And of course, going to USC now transferring. But I mean, Spencer Rattler, he transferred. So you just got those guys. So it's a wait and see with the quarterbacks for me. But the running backs, I'm definitely excited. And wide receivers as well, too.
Yeah, it's the wide receivers do definitely look to be strong again. One name that I was really surprised. I can't say insanely surprised, but one that I just wasn't thinking about as much because you have Stroud, Radler, Young, some of these guys. Tyler Van Dyke from Miami. He's one that I saw in multiple mocks as a first round potential type quarterback. And Miami hasn't really produced an insane amount of quarterback value here recently. But looking at him, it sounds Gaddis was talking here in spring practice that he's looked really good leading the offense. Projects to be a guy that could really put up a lot of pass attempts this year and potentially develop into something really nice. Have you looked much into Tyler Van Dyke? I mean, what's your gut on a guy like that if you have?
I've only seen a few things, like a couple breakdowns of some people I follow in the Twitter community that did some kind of some breakdowns on Tyler Van Dyke. From what I recall from seeing from that and just any kind of write-ups or things like that. He seems like he's someone that could be a top guy coming out next year. Why not? You have someone like Kenny Pickett that came out of nowhere this year. I mean, he's looked at as a top guy, and you always going to get those kind of come out of nowhere quarterbacks. So why not be him? Not that he's coming out of nowhere, but he did have a nice little final stretch to the end of the year and things like that. You have some kind of optimism of him being that guy. So yeah, I wouldn't be mad at him coming out and proving that he should be one of the top quarterbacks next year.
Yeah, he is going a different direction. A lot of these quarterbacks, you think about their size, they're smaller, 6'1", even under. CJ Stroud, was it, 5'11", 5'12"? I don't know, even know if he's 6 foot yet. Where this kid, he's 6'4", 6'5", 220. You think of throwback size of a quarterback, but he's got a little bit of athleticism. he's not Kenny Pickett when it comes to breaking ankles or anything, but the dude can move around and get out of the pocket. When I pulled him up on 247 and rivals some of those 4-star, it looked like he was pretty highly recruited coming out in the 2020 class, I think. So he definitely profiles as a guy that if you'd have seen him go to some of these other big schools that normally put out quarterbacks, people wouldn't be surprised at all. But I think going to Miami, he's been a bit under the radar. But having a guy like Josh Gaddis there in that and helping lead from a coaching standpoint, I think could be really helpful for a kid like this. So I just seen it a bunch, and I'm really intrigued. I think I've got a few Devy drafts coming up right around the time of the NFL draft, and I'm probably going to target this guy if he slips after round 2 kind of thing, just to stash him and see what happens. Because if he really does, obviously we're a year plus ahead. So mock drafts right now mean about as much as mock drafts leading up to the draft. Very little, but at least it's an interesting conversation piece. Yeah, so everybody knows the big names at quarterback, and we obviously know those big names. And then I think the wide receiver, like we said, the wide receiver class should still be productive. But let's hit on a couple running backs. Now, obviously, everybody in the Devy community, Bijan Robinson's been a thing, been a big name. I'm looking at, I pulled up my friend Shane Hallam from the Draft Countdown. Make sure y'all go check out their site, top notch. Shane does great stuff. But looking at his first round, he's got Bijan Robinson, Jamar Gibbs, Zach Evans, and Tank Bigsby. He's got 4 running backs in his first round mock. What do you think about those 4 running backs? So give me kind of your thoughts on those guys. Everybody knows Bijan's the name in Devy when it comes to running backs, but what do you think about that group of 4? And do you have them in that order?
Well, yes, I would have to say, particularly in that order, Tank Bigsby. That was a surprise to see him in the first round. Just because in the recent years we haven't seen a lot of running backs go in the first round, and I'm not sure if a lot of NFL organizations want to put up first round draft capital for a running back unless they're on some like generational kind of talent. So I can definitely see Bijan for sure. He's definitely going first round just because as soon as he enters the NFL, he's definitely a top 10 dynasty running back. I wouldn't be mad if somebody said he was a top 5. That's a little hot takey, but definitely top 10 though, because Bijan is just that kind of a talent as far as when it comes to running back. And then Jamir Gibbs, I can see him going in the first round just because of his skill set. He can catch the ball. He can run between the tackles and things like that. And I think he's one of those running backs that you can bring in the league where he may not run the ball 25 times plus up the gut or in between the tackles. He's going to be put in space. They're going to get him in opportunities and things like that. So I believe both of those two, Zach Evans and Tank, even though they could be considered first round talents, I just don't think the NFL is going to spend draft capital on running backs anymore until I see something different. The last couple of years, they really haven't drafted any running backs in the first round. And by all means, they're drafting defensive and offensive players and things like that. And running back, I feel like the NFL has gotten to the point where they're going to draft these guys in the second, third, fourth, fifth rounds and not use that first round draft capital on them.
And nowadays you don't have to. You're seeing late round guys that are producing at a day 2, day 3 guys that are producing at a high level or are because especially the running back position because they rotate, multiple guys in it. You don't have to because it just isn't a necessity. So yeah, and I love mock drafts. I love to kind of project and think about. We know how the NFL works when it comes to early first rounds. Typically, if there's quarterbacks to take, people are drafting quarterbacks, and it's just top 5, top 10, top 15. We see it every year. This draft class, there's been so much conversation about if there's any that go just because there's no surefire. But next year, there's some potential surefire guys. Some of these running backs and some of these other players are sliding up in people's mock drafts just because the talent. When you think best player, some of these running backs are worthy of best player when you get to the mid first, late first, but they probably won't be just because that. Unfortunately, position is as good as running backs can be for an NFL roster. You just don't have to worry about them that high. There is one player looking through all these. I pulled up 3 different mock drafts and I've been combing through them, getting ready for tonight's show. Only one of them has a tight end in the first round, and that's Notre Dame's Michael Mayer. Do you think tight end's kind of an interesting position because sometimes you see a couple go in the first round, sometimes you just don't see any. Like this year, we won't see any tight ends in the first round. I don't
Mhm.
even know if we'll see tight ends in the second round, quite honestly. What do you think about a guy like Michael Mayer? And is this a cornerstone type tight end that a team can draft and be their guy for the long term? And how do you feel about him?
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely a really good tight end to be coming out in this class or in 23 class. He every time and I was talking about this the other day with a friend of mine when we were just talking about football, and then we was thinking about like fantasy tight ends and things. And I brought him up because I was thinking like, man, he's one of those tight ends. When I watched him, I don't watch too many Notre Dame games. Nothing against Notre Dame. But I haven't, really watched him like that. But anytime I've seen any game tapes, I might have flipped channels and say, hey, let me check out this game a little bit. And then I would see him, and he was always just popping on the screen. He just looked unguardable. He looked like he was really tough. He can go out and play in line and be a good blocker and things like that. And he was out there also and could make big plays with the balls in between seams and things like that. And he would go in and make touchdowns and things like that. So I really think he's going to be a really good tight end in the league. First round, that would be surprising for me. Just I'll have to go back to the running backs thing because you don't see too many tight ends go in the first round. But he's worthy of it just because he's really dominant out there every time he plays. And if he goes to the combine and tests well and things like that, when do his pro day really good, I think he should be definitely considered for the first round for sure. I have a few shares of in Devy leagues of Michael Mayer, so I'm really happy and
Mhm.
really anxious to get him up to my dynasty roster because when you're in startup, sometimes you're not able to get those top end guys. So you're hoping with your Devy picks that you can supplement that, and hopefully in a year or two you can catch that gem of a position just tight end. We play in tight end premium leagues and things like that. So you want to be able to find somebody where you can just set it, forget it, worry about the bye weeks and things like that. Because I know when I build in dynasty, sometimes you're not able to get the top guys. So I would love to be able to get him in a Devy.
Dude, he's so good.
Yeah.
So smooth in and out of his cuts. He's physical. I like some of I was looking at comps. People try to compare him to other tight ends. And a lot of people keep going to Zach Ertz type mold. 6'4", over 230 at this point, probably 240, 245, I think, at this point. And he's physical. He can do it all. He's an athletic tight end. So he could be a team's move tight end that they're flexing out, trying to do some things from the slot. And he just, in my mind, it's like, how do you not target this guy? If you're a team, look at the NFL now. I saw Twitter here recently was in an uproar because of a few guys were pumping out their top tight end rankings, and you've got guys like Dalton Schultz and some of these guys that are fine tight ends, but they're not elite fantasy tight ends. And people go crazy about rankings, and it is what it is. But this kid, like, I could see him step in and in day one be a tight end one because it isn't hard to break into the tight end one conversation. I think in the most recent, I think it was somebody from PFF that had posted, like, Irv Smith was on their top, I think 10 or 15 or whatever it was. And it was like, if a guy like Irv Smith who's not been healthy and you haven't seen him produce, like, this kid's going to step in and just run right up to the top of the tight end. I think he was a 5-star coming out, if I remember correctly. And he, even as a rookie or a freshman, I should say, not a rookie, even as a freshman at Notre Dame, he was pushing for playing time and they wanted to get him on the field. And they had other tight ends there that were worthy of playing time. So he's one of those guys that if he isn't on a roster in a Devy draft, make sure he gets on your roster because this is as surefire as a tight end in fantasy is. This kid will be it going into the league because
Yeah.
he's just that good. What's that?
I said he definitely is. He's
Oh yeah,
definitely one of those guys you definitely want to have on your roster. I definitely agree.
yeah. I think I have at least 2 shares if I remember correctly. I
Yeah.
know I have 2 for sure.
I'm about to say I have two.
Yeah.
I can say the same thing. It's tough. It's tough to get those guys. You don't get a good tight end all the time. You got to get them when you can, and then especially in Devy leagues, it's good to be a little early sometimes. And I've been hearing about Michael Mayer for the last 2 years, so you had 2 years to get this guy.
Well, and it's hard to project the tight end, and because the way colleges use them. Most of the time, think about schools like Alabama, big name schools that get tight ends. They're using them for blockers. They're very rarely used in the passing game. Or you get teams like Coastal Carolina where their tight end is just a wide receiver. It doesn't necessarily project great to the next level because at the NFL level, they need you to be a blocker at least a little bit. You have to have some ability to block, but you also have to be an athletic freak so that they can flex you out and do some other stuff with you. So it's colleges don't do tight ends very well justice. That's why
Wow.
the Miamis, the Notre Dames, the tight end U's of the world, the Iowas, the people just keep looking there for tight end because they just know how to develop them and get them ready for the NFL. So some of the wide receivers that I see in the first rounds and some of these mocks, Keyshawn, I think we call them Butte. I think that's what we went with. Keyshawn Butte from LSU. I also see Jackson Smith and Jigba, Ohio State. I see Quentin Johnson from TCU,
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Addison from Pittsburgh. Those look like the names that I see consistently on mocks. How do you feel about those guys? Do you think those guys are at the top of the list, or is there somebody else that you think needs to be in that conversation as one of the top tight ends in next year's class?
No, I think they probably that's I'll have to see. Excuse me, I'll have to say that those four you said, so JSN, Butte,
Johnson,
Addison,
Quentin Johnson, and Jordan.
Addison and
Uh-huh.
Quentin Johnson. Yeah, they're all capable receivers that could be considered for the first round because they're just as good of the classes coming out now, and they're already considering about 3 or 4 guys going in the first round of this year. With Butte, he was coming off the injury and things. And that's my guy. That's my number one guy of this class. So I think between him and JSN, they are like neck and neck, if you want to say just the top guys. And then Johnston, he just been playing well. He had a really good year last year. He had a come out party that really sold me when I seen him play against Bama. Like, he really torched them really good, and he showed that he could be a playmaker. And Addison, the Blitnikoff winner. When you win the Blitnikoff, you have to be somewhat good. You had to put up a good season to be considered for that award. Not to throw anything or say anything down about getting those awards or whatever, but you had to have played good. That means you're the best wide receiver in the country. You should always build on that and want to stack that into being a great NFL player. So I'm hoping Addison can come in and to the NFL, give us for organization. He doesn't have to be the number one guy, just be a piece to contribute and things like that. And we could have a solid career. I think all four of those guys can have really solid careers in the NFL.
Yeah, this class, when you look at it, it's a smaller class. That's the one thing I did notice. Outside of Johnston, none of the top, 10 guys are more than 6 foot, 6'1". I mean, most of them are 6 foot and under. And I would agree with you because after those four, you got guys like Josh Downs, Parker Washington, Rakim Jarrett, Jermaine Burton. None of these guys necessarily scream out to me. These are first round elite level guys. Good guys. Like I'm definitely interested in a few of them. I think Jarrett was one of the ones that I really liked out of that class. The thing I wonder about, and with TCU, I want to get your opinion. Do you subscribe to the schools that can produce? So I mentioned like tight end U. TCU really hasn't produced a wide receiver that's been much. Jaylen Berger was drafted in the first round, but as much as we like him, he ain't shown out yet. When you think about other TCU wideouts, I mean, Jeremy Curley. Oh gosh, what was that other? I had his name on my tongue just a second ago. Josh Dotson. They really haven't produced a ton of talent at wide receiver. Do you worry about things like that because the school just hasn't been a strong producer, or does it not matter in your mind? Just a kid's a kid.
Wow, that's definitely a good question.
I don't know the answer to it. I'm posing it because I'm like, when I looked back at it, I was like, oh, they don't really produce wide receivers.
Yeah. With that being said, I don't think that plays a factor to me a lot. It probably should. And now that you said that, it should go more in my process of evaluating players and then evaluating what offenses they're in and what schools they go to, because that matters as well. Just because you can have someone or a wide receiver or a running back or whatever in a certain offense and he just doesn't perform too well, and then he just gets to the league, and you're like, where was this at in college? And they produce, but I don't think it will be that way. I really look at just how they produce when they're in college, and if they pop. If they don't, for me, then I won't pick them. I won't pick them up in my leagues. I'll just have a wait and see and maybe trade for them later if they get to the league and play a little bit better. But I don't necessarily look at the offenses or how if these colleges produce at a certain position. But I probably should do that, though. That is a very interesting question. So that's a good one.
And that's a tough thing. When I talk to guys about, when folks send me DMs or whatever asking about Devy and where to pick guys or how to pick guys or how to look for guys to pick, I struggle with that because, a guy like Quentin Johnson, you look at the schools that are at the top of folks' lists when it comes to the wide receivers in the 2023 class: LSU, Ohio State, Pittsburgh, North Carolina, Penn State, Maryland, Alabama. These are schools that produce wide receivers regularly, and it wouldn't surprise me. These guys come in the league, show out, fine. But then you see TCU, Washington, Boston College. You're like, okay, these are schools that don't always produce high-end NFL talent. You know what? I don't, and in my mind, I don't know that a kid can break the mold. If you're good, it doesn't really matter that you chose to go to a school that doesn't show out a ton of wide receiver talent. Like, fine. But in my mind, I'm like, all right, so how do you help people prepare and go look for Devy and go figure out who to draft? We all have our websites that we go to and we look at rankings and we look at kids that are scouted. Like Johnston was a 4-star kid, looks the part of an outside number 1 receiver, big, long strider, physical enough that I think he'll be just fine when he gets to the league. But he goes to a school that just doesn't produce wide receivers. So, you know, so I want to pose that question, like make us think a little bit. Does it really matter all that much? You know, I don't know that it does. A good player is a good player. It doesn't matter what school you go to.
Yeah, just to touch on it a little bit more. That's how I feel too. If it was a situation where we was playing in like a C2C league, then I may try to understand how the offenses work in the college, because you're getting points for those guys because you're setting lineups and things like that. But in the W League, they're basically sitting on a taxi squad,
just waiting.
Yeah, and they're waiting to get to the NFL, and you're just hoping that you can evaluate and see the talent, and just think that when you make these picks in these drafts or supplemental drafts that come in the next year, like the Devy depleted drafts or whatever, you're just hoping that you can identify guys that you can have on your squad and they can go to your dynasty roster and then produce and then get in the right system and get the right development and things like that. So they can and ultimately help you win championships, because that's what we're doing this for, to be honest.
Very true. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's one of those things that, and I think this is probably why Devy will continue to stay a niche part of the fantasy community, because it's an educated guess. Like, we're going into it going, you know what, these schools tend to produce. We're going to try to look here first and foremost. Then when you get to C2C leagues, then that's even deeper. And there's a lot of work that goes into trying to understand and trying to figure out. Like, you can't just Google it and then go with what you're seeing. You can go to rotoheat.com and see our rankings and go based on that. And you can get some good talent. But somebody who's really trying to dig into it, it takes a lot of work to try to understand that. And the people that found Quentin Johnston before everybody else potentially going to see big dividends, because this kid's projected to be a high draft pick next year and projected to be one of the higher end wide receivers drafted next year. So it's wild. If you hit, it's huge. If you miss, then you just try again. But
it's definitely a lot of research to go into it, though. Just when I first started playing Devy a year or two ago, I feel crazy about the picks that I even made, because I just didn't. And thankfully, we have sites like RotoHeat and other sites that have that Devy rankings now, because you can just go out there and at least get an idea. I feel like when I first started in Devy, I couldn't find Devy rankings anywhere. I think I was going off of college fantasy football rankings or something. It is what it is when it comes to that, but I know I've come a long way, but it just takes some time. You don't have to always be 24/7 in your going on these websites and things like that. You could just have a basic idea. And if you find like a good website like RotoHeat, and you can come use their rankings, our rankings that we have, you can go out in your drafts and feel confident and say, okay, these are the guys that everybody's talking about. These are the kind of consensus rankings. Let's go ahead and then you make your decision as a fantasy manager and go and that's what you can do. Look at a few guys here and there. That's what I used to do. If I seen any kind of rankings and things like that, start just taking a little 5-10 minutes to go look at a couple clips on YouTube or something like that. And as you stack those kind of days, you'll realize when you see these names, or you'll be in these mock drafts, or you'll be in your Devy drafts, you will feel real comfortable making these picks, because you'll at least be knowledgeable. You don't have to necessarily know their whole life story and all their receptions or rushing yards they had every year. But if it shows that they're productive, they're winning these awards and things like that, if they're being talked about, they're top guys. So why not? I can say that there's more sites out here now that I can say, and it's a lot of chatter on Twitter and all these other Slack discords where it's too much stuff out here. If you really want to know about Devy, if you really want to get into C2C, definitely for sure.
Yeah, and the thing that I like about going to like YouTubes of the world and watching guys play is that you'll start to see and you'll start to be able to build your own eye test. Like you'll know when you're looking at a dude, like, okay, this is a dog. This guy's gonna make it. He can be all right. The thing that I struggle with, and that you start to see, especially, and you notice it a lot come draft time, is people start nitpicking all the little things and trying to make story. And this time of year, you're trying to drum up stories and have conversations. I get it. You start looking at a perfect example is a guy like a Kayvon Thibodeau. Obviously, we're talking offense tonight, but this kid's getting nitpicked because he's got off the field aspirations and he's into stuff off the field. He's got to make money. Like the NFL ain't going to pay him forever. It just don't work that way. I try not to dig too much into to the likes, to the dislikes, to the. You want to pay attention to like red flags, but people start nitpicking these players and making cases for why. So I stick to the tape. I watch the kid play, and if he looks like he can do it, I start to build my eye test that way. And then I look at people's rankings, and I look at that's how I do. I try to leave the personal stuff at the door because it don't make no sense. It's crazy to me thinking that all that stuff, and I could go on and on about that stuff. Watch film, and by watching film, hit YouTube, look at people's rankings, and then go from there, and you'll be fine. We all make mistakes. We all draft guys that turn into duds at the next level. It happens, but more often than not, we find the guys that are getting on raw. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go. Let's look a little further down. All right, so that's most of the round one projected type players: wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, quarterbacks. Looking rounds two. Let's go round two. Oh, look, this is a fun one. Grayson McCall, quarterback, Coastal Carolina. I see him there. Sean Tucker, your boy Sean Tucker. You've brought him up a couple times. I know you like Sean Tucker. I see him in round two. He's from Syracuse. He's a good running back. He's really interesting, and I could really be a sleeper. Quite honestly, he could be a steal of the draft if you can't get one of those top four and you go for him. Let's see what else we got.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean Tucker is one of those guys that he jumped on the scene last year and kind of put everybody on radar because I didn't hear about Sean Tucker until last year. But when you look at how the guy plays, he just looks like he plays very tough, and he really is really into making himself a better football player. He's very prideful about what he does. I've seen a lot of people that I follow on Twitter that kind of follows him, so he gets the retweets and stuff like that. And he understands, or at least he portrays that he understands that he can always be better. He would critique his own self. After having a monster game, he would be like, I didn't get this first down here or something like that. I missed a block here and there. And I like athletes that's like that because it's attention to detail. You understand that you got to work. Everybody's not physically gifted to just walk out there and dominate. Others got to put in that work and work hard. And he sounds and looks like a hard worker. So why not reward that with somebody that's like that? I haven't really watched Grayson McCall too much though, but I do hear about him. And they have him going in the second round in the mock that you have?
Yeah, I've a couple of mocks have him in the second,
wow.
Floating around the middle of the second round. He's an interesting kid, and people are talking about Isaiah Likely as one of the top tight ends in this class, and McCall was his quarterback. He targeted him early and often because they had good chemistry. He's got the size. He profiles pretty well. He's 6'3", over 200 pounds. Seems to have the arm strength. The tough thing is he's at Coastal Carolina. Like people are going to question being at a small school, not moving on, and especially with the way the transfer portal works nowadays, if you show out in whatever conference you're in, and one of the big guys wants to go get you, and you want to move on, that can happen. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what comes from him because he looks the part, but he's dominating talent, lesser talent. So maybe I'm not super sold on it. I would prefer him as like a developmental guy. I think just because of the level of talent that he's facing, just because he's showing out. And another one I'm seeing here in second rounds is Anthony Richardson from quarterback in Florida.
Yeah,
he's another one where I'm like, maybe I think he's pretty similar when it comes to. I think he's six. Oh gosh, now I'm gonna have to look it up. I think he's 6'2".
Yeah, I think he's up
6'4".
Yeah, and I actually like Richardson a little bit. He's another one you kind of got to wait and see, just because he really didn't get too many. He played a little bit last year behind Emory Jones, and he came in and played, and he showed that he could be a spark plug. He had a couple nice games where he broke off some huge runs and just rushing the ball. He's a bit raw as a quarterback as far as throwing. I mean, he can get a lot better with that. I think hopefully with the development, and you will hope with the development at Florida, even with the new coaching staff and things like that, that they're going to put him in positions where he can be successful in his skill set. Just like you said, I can see a maybe with him as well. He's one of my dark horse guys for the 23 class that maybe can jump up there and make some noise, because for a couple weeks he did some things. I have him on a few C2C rosters. To see guys put up points on my bench is very noticeable, because I wasn't really very knowledgeable of Anthony Richardson until last year. So hopefully he gets a little better, this year, and gain some more draft stock in second round. That would be really great for him. Honestly, I would be excited. And if he can get a first round grade, I would be really excited about that, though. He would have to have a really great year, though.
Well, and it'll be interesting because they got a new staff there. Napier and company come in. The type of offense, I would assume they're going to be a spread offense. So I'm assuming there's going to be a ton of passing going around. So if he can show improvement throughout this year, there's no reason why he couldn't be in that conversation. After the top two quarterbacks, it could be open. When we were talking about the guys in the first round, Young and Stroud, and then after that, it's question mark type guys that another strong year could make sure they're first round guys. But why not Richardson? It wouldn't surprise me if he has a really strong season. That why couldn't he be in that conversation? It's not like he doesn't have the measurables or the speed. He's got a lot of what the league's looking for nowadays. The ability, he's got big arm. He's got a big arm. He's got good mobility. And the NFL has not exactly got a ton of elite talent. And we're talking about Mitch Trubisky leading an offense again. And
yes,
not exactly been a showstopper. Drew Lock could be leading Seattle this year. There's plenty of jobs to be had at the NFL level if some of these kids really are, if they can take another step. The tough thing, like you said about Richardson, is the kid's super raw. He's really going to have to show some big improvement in a tough conference. It's not like Florida doesn't have Florida's got some tough matches throughout the season. So he's going to get tested. And if he can show poise, if he can show the ability to make some things happen and improvise, it could be sky's the limit for him. Let's see what else we got in round two. All right. So we talked that Josh Downs from North Carolina. We see him in the second round. Parker Washington from Penn State, wide receiver from Penn State. We've seen another tight end, Cameron Latu from Alabama, Zach Charbonnet from UCLA. Jaheim Bell, tight end from South Carolina. We got a lot of tight ends. Darnell Washington from Georgia, and then
all going second round.
Yeah, all projected, mocked in the second round. Then Devin Kane from Texas A&M. So quite a bit of tight ends, and not a lot of everything. Do any of those tight ends stand out to you, or any of those guys that have been on your radar, or guys that you really even been jumping on, other than C2C or
tight ends for this class, other than Michael Mayer? That's surprising that they have 4 going in the second round.
Yeah, 4.
Because Cameron Latu, he's solid. He's kind of do nothing there, you know what I mean? And then Billingsley, you had, what was the other one? Jaheim.
Yeah, Bell from South Carolina.
I don't know. I would have those type of guys, just like you said, the tight end's so hard. If you don't really get too excited about a prospect, I would just wait and see, punt it, and then hopefully they can get into the NFL and you can maybe make a trade or things like that, or get them in a rookie draft when you maybe feel a lot better about where they're. If you draft after the actual NFL draft, where their landing spot is, then you know what the scheme, and if it's a place where you see them using their tight ends and things, and it all depends. Tight ends is so weird, but I just don't feel comfortable with anybody other than Mayer in this class.
Well, especially because all those schools, South Carolina does a pretty good job. They normally are pretty good about producing some NFL tight ends every now and then, but otherwise, Bama doesn't do nothing with tight ends. Georgia doesn't really utilize tight ends all that much. They put them at the next level, and McKitty and some of these guys, they get to the league, but the team doesn't showcase them all that much. So it'll be interesting to see, how it shakes out.
I'll say Bowers is probably an outlier from last year. But he's like a hybrid kind of a tight end too. Bowers is not really a traditional, in my eyes, he's not really a traditional kind of tight. He's like kind of hybrid, where he's a mismatch kind of guy. And I think that was an outlier, because I do agree with you with the Georgia not having too many producers either. And they've had some guys, though, just like you said, Trey McKitty. They have Bowers there now. They have Darnell Washington, I think, is there now. He's a pretty solid guy. Then you had Eric Gilbert. Oh my God, Eric Gilbert.
Man,
He's a guy that's probably has people pulling out their hair now. Nothing against the guy. I don't want to go against anything or his issues or whatever the case may be. But man,
he
this
still
time
hasn't picked
last
a school. He still has he picked a school?
nah, he's at Georgia.
Oh, was he at Georgia?
Yeah,
I was like, I
he's
knew he
at
was in the
Georgia.
transfer
So
portal. Oh yeah, he did go to Georgia.
they have him like in between tight end and wide receiver, and that's like a headache. And I was in Devy drafts, and Eric Gilbert was getting picked in the first round. Okay, so you're not looking too happy about that right now if you made that pick, because they was putting them out there to be like the next Kyle Pitts and things like that. That's why I said I don't really feel good about tight ends. A lot of times, if you're not giving me a Kyle Pitts, if you're not giving me a Michael Mayer, even Travis Kelce, then he wasn't nothing until he came. He got to the league, and then that's when he became Travis Kelce. You got to realize that Travis Kelce has been one of the most dominant tight ends in NFL history, especially real life and fantasy. So he's one of those guys that, man, if you had him in a dynasty league the last 5 or 6 years, you were happy to have him, unless you just didn't have a really good squad and you needed to.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm with you there. So my next question is: Devin Akane a guy that can make it at the next level? I mean, he's an undersized dude. What is he? 5'8", 5'9". He's like 100. I think if you got him wet, he might be 185 pounds, 190. Is he Tariq Cohen 2.0, where he's super electric and dynamic, but just can't handle the amount of physicality at the next level?
Yeah, when you have track guys, especially guys like him, because they basically trying to put it out there like he has somewhat like Olympic speed. And with that being said, when you're running track, you're not gaining any weight. You really want to shed pounds so you can run your best 100-meter dash or 200, whatever he runs. And he's definitely going to be in the NFL. Somebody's going to draft him because he's fast. And if he has pretty solid size, but he's not going to be one of those running backs that is going to be a bell cow or anything like that. But you could be hopeful that at his ceiling, he can be a satellite back, come in for third downs, catch the ball out the backfield, get him in space, maybe do some jet sweeps or stuff like that, just because he's fast and he can run the ball. So you do things like that. I don't know how much I've seen him catch the ball in college. I just always heard he was fast. That's all. And anything I've seen, he's just been fast. But if he can kind of catch the ball out the backfield and things like that, he could be a good satellite third down back and be productive. A lot of those kind of backs, they have a lot of longer longevity in the league because they just don't take the pounding of these 3-down bell cows. Look at James White. He's still playing and getting contracts, and that guy, he's not a 3-down guy, but he created his niche and he's been good for years, or at least solid for the Patriots. And Akshay can be the same way.
I'm about to say he was fantasy relevant for a minute there.
Yeah.
It looks like, looking at his stats, so as a freshman, 43 carries, 364 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5 receptions, 97 yards, 1 touchdown. So average almost 20 yards of reception as a freshman. Only 5 receptions, so it's not saying much. As a sophomore, 130 touches for 910 yards, 9 touchdowns on the ground. Then 24 receptions, 261 yards, and a touchdown through the air. So just over 10 yards, almost 11 yards of reception. So you can see that there's an increase in there, and they're steadily trying to put it on him. If you get this kid up around 200 attempts this year, that would be my hope for him. Is let's see what he can do with. It's not like he's in a weak conference. He's in the SEC at A&M. Give him 200 touches. Give him 30, 40, 50 receptions. Let's see what he does with it. Can he handle that? Stay healthy throughout the season. That would really make me feel more comfortable about him as somebody's number 2 running back that gets a little bit more involved and not just a gadget type guy. That's my sweet spot, I feel, for him. Let's see him with a bigger workload this year. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know if he can do it. Maybe 150 is his cap when it comes to rushing attempts, and then maybe they up his, he can get some more receptions or something. But fast people make it to the NFL because you can't coach that. That's the one thing that you can't coach. All right, so let's see.
And that's exactly why he's going to definitely make it to the NFL. Now, what round, I don't know. But he's definitely going to get drafted just because he's fast. If he can't play running back, they're going to try him at wide receiver or whatever. He's definitely going to play. He's definitely going to make the league and play at least a few years, if not longer.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree. So let's see. we'll probably just get through the third round, and we'll just hit that, and we'll end it on that because that's a good amount of people. So let's see. Third round, Jermaine Burton, wide receiver, Bama. We got Jaylen Berger, running back from Michigan State.
Mm.
Rakim Jarrett, wide receiver, Maryland. Hendon Hooker, quarterback, Tennessee. Let's see. Marvin Mims, wide receiver, Oklahoma. Bill Jerkovic from Boston College. Kendall Milton from Georgia. Zay Flowers from BC. Jalen McMillan from Washington. Dante Demas from Maryland. Man, both Maryland wide receivers in there. And that's it. Bunch of linebackers, bunch of offensive linemen. Does any of those names stand out as guys that you've been targeting or making sure you have on rosters? Anybody that you're in love with in that group?
Jermaine Burton is interesting just because you have him transferring to Bama. You're hoping that he does somewhat of a Jamison Williams kind of thing to project him to be one of the top wide receivers. Now that's third round, but to be considered to be one of those wide receivers that you pick up in your Devy draft. So he's interesting, and his stock could rise a little bit too. I like Rakim Jarrett. I hope he bounces back this year because
Maryland won't do him any favors.
Huh?
I said Maryland won't do him any favors. That offense is just not great.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's wild how they got that offense going on down there. But it's interesting to hear Jaylen Berger in that third round though. He's just a guy that I don't know. He was talked about a lot last year, and he was at Wisconsin at the time. And from one way or another, he ended up losing his spot to, I forgot the guy's name, and then Braylon Allen comes in at the end of the year, and then you just basically knew that Jaylen Berger wasn't going to be there anymore. And I think he has some kind of off the field stuff, maybe some locker room stuff with players. Something happened where he ended up being kicked off the team or whatever the case may be, and then he goes to Michigan State. So you can only be hopeful that, okay, he may be another Kenneth Walker, like everybody's do this transfer portal thing to maybe resurrect their stock. But a lot of the stuff I've seen from him, just tape and stuff like that, I just wasn't really too impressed. So maybe he got his act together and maybe he can go to Michigan State and get some kind of a rise in his stock. But that was surprising to hear about him because Jaylen Berger, I'm out. Like he's got to definitely show me some serious commitment of playing good and wanting to play football and things like that for me to even want to invest in him in a Devy pick. Like he's one of those I will wait till the rookie draft.
Yeah, just let him slide.
Yeah, I wouldn't even waste a Devy pick on him at all.
Yeah, he's an interesting case because it's hard to read into it, but when you see what Wisconsin does, they go out, bring guys in, transfer portal stuff like this. Man, that's telling because Wisconsin produces running backs. And that's a running back school that consistently you see guys going in the league from. So it's okay. So what's going on here that's really causing people to move on from this kid already? But then on the flip side, I love Mel Tucker. I hate Michigan State as a U of M guy, but man, I love Mel Tucker. That dude, he knows how to build a program, and he keeps doing it. Like he turned Michigan State into a powerhouse last year when everybody was expecting them to be nothing. So can he turn this kid around? Can he get this kid fired up? Can he help develop whatever things were the problem? If somebody could, it's him. So it's okay. I see you, Jaylen Berger. Like I'll at least keep an eye on you when the games start to matter here in the fall. But yeah, I'm with you. I would be looking elsewhere because you only have a certain amount of Devys. I'm not going to jump all over this kid just yet. As much as I like to stash a few extra running backs, I would wait and see with him as well. But I feel bad for Demas and Rakim Jarrett there in Maryland because, man, how does Maryland keep getting these really talented wide receivers, but then the offense is just trash around them? We still got a Tagovailoa there. They've got nothing at running back to really show for. Their offensive line is veterans per se. I think we've got sophomores, juniors, seniors. Like they have some guys that have been there for a minute, but it's like I don't know that you can do these kids any favors unless you let them leave because I don't know that they're going to they'll probably get a ton of passes, but they're going to be erratic. Tagovailoa is not exactly the most accurate kid. So there's a lot of concern there for me, but I like both the players. And luckily enough, scouts can look past a crappy offense and see the talent in the players. I'll be interested to see how both these kids turn out because I think both of them could make a roster and be in the conversation for a significant amount of playing time. Jarrett's better than Demas, but I think both have certainly potential value.
Yeah. And look, before Demas got hurt last year, you would have thought he was better than Jarrett.
You're absolutely right.
He was having a really solid year until he got that injury.
Hmm. You're absolutely right. So it'll be interesting to see how he bounces back. The last bit here that was surprising to me is just kind of the another run on quarterbacks. It seems like every round there's been multiple quarterbacks. I passed over. I didn't even notice them, but Will Levis, quarterback from Kentucky. I don't even know what to make of that. Like I don't know. I've watched a kid. Like I've watched plenty of him play, and I just don't know. I don't necessarily know that I see what others are seeing with him. The same goes with Hooker from Tennessee, Hendon Hooker. Both of those guys look like probably developmental guys that are backups mostly. Phil Jerkovic over in Boston College, he was one that I have on one Devy roster because I thought he might come out in this class. And I was surprised that he didn't, quite honestly, because it's a weaker class. I would have thought his size, his big arm, yeah, he's not the most athletic. He's certainly not going to wow anybody with his feet, but he prototypes as one of those kind of more pocket passer type guys, I would think, at the next level. But I was surprised he didn't come out. He'd be a name that I'd be interested to see how another season of BC does. But do any of these quarterbacks do anything for you?
At the moment, not necessarily. Just because Will Levis, I when so he became on radar because of Wandale Robinson. To be honest, Wandale, he was out there making big plays and doing things. It made Will Levis to be put on radar. Hendon Hooker, I just see him as the hot guy everybody talking about because everybody wants to be on the next guy, and that's what I feel about him because I don't see it either, or at least not right now. I mean, quarterbacks is another one like tight ends. It's hard to jump on them early in Devy. I don't suggest unless you just feel like you have a generational talent. If you have like Arch Manning,
Yeah,
that's
man, you haven't said you got a Manning in your roster.
when you have Arch Manning that's going to be committing soon, you know what I mean? That's something that you may want to take a swing on because it's just the pedigree in the name. I know a lot of people went all in on Quinn Ewers last year. He's an exciting quarterback. But as far as to be looking at 23 guys, you had a few years of watching them. Hopefully, we did miss the COVID year and things like that, but you had to at least have a few years of watching them, and should have some kind of evaluation. So, with that being said, I just don't feel too excited about them. I would be hoping to get a lot of first and second round 23 picks so I can max out on what's at the top that I like because 23 class might be at the end of the day not as good as we think. I don't want to say that too early. As far as depth, I feel like it might be a top heavy class where you might want to get your picks early. And if you have rookie picks and any of these guys slip through, other than that, if Devy wise, you should already have them on your roster because a lot of the top guys, they're not going to be in your rookie drafts.
I will not argue that. I definitely looking at it right now. The one thing we can never account for is obviously the underclassmen that come out as well as guys that just pop off. So you have those that Kenny Pickett the place and get big and you just never know. But right now it's certainly very top heavy with guys that we know for sure that should be in the draft next year. But the ones that are really good, that's the thing that's differentiating between this class and next year's is that those high-end quarterbacks, those high-end running backs, we got some elite level talent that could be in next year's draft, barring injury and things like that. So
yeah. It's going to take more. It's going to take more scouting and evaluating players, just because when you have these like the next year's class, you already have an idea of who's coming out and things like that. But you want to find those sleepers. You want to find them gems that's going to be maybe people that's going to be slipping through drafts or through Devy drafts and things. I have a Devy rookie draft coming up soon, and we have Ritter, Pickett, Willis, Jamison Williams, Kenneth Walker. They're all in the rookie. They weren't Devy picks. You know what I'm saying? So those guys are going to be in rookie draft. So sometimes they can slip through. With that being said, you always got to look out for that and maybe not trade those rookie picks too, because I'm just noticing that. I just thought it was really crazy that all those guys slipped through. And it all depends on how you feel about them as well. But 23 class is going to be very interesting, and it would be really nice to find like a couple more quarterbacks other than like the top two guys. I hope a couple more guys pop out and give them some kind of competition. Hopefully, like Spencer Rattler can bounce back because he's another guy that can jump in there. And not really sure about DJU. I seen him at the spring game. I wasn't too impressed, but you have guys like that, and then of course you have Will Levis and Tyler Van Dyke, and you want to hope that they can get up in there. But just the wide receivers, running backs, I think we're pretty solid with them, and then tight end, maybe somebody comes and challenges Mayer, but I doubt it. So
Yeah, I would agree. So that's it, folks. The 2023 NFL draft is right there in front of you. Um, like we always say, if you guys got questions, hit us up. We're always willing to talk ball. We like to chop it up with everybody in the community. We do love those conversations. Stick it here with us. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you're listening to this in podcast format, in fact, leave a rating and a review. Over the next few weeks, we got a lot of fun stuff coming up. I know with the NFL draft, we'll be talking a little bit about that. But as soon as the draft's over, we're going to do some Devy mocks so that you guys can see who we would be taking. So we're going to work with Jason and some of the other folks in the Roto Heat team and try to do some of that here coming up. So make sure you like and subscribe and do all those things, and then get back here next week so you can talk to us some more, or I should say, listen to us talk some more. And we thank you guys as always. We really do appreciate it. Monday night we do IDP. Tuesday night we do Dynasty. Thursday night we do Devy. And we're adding best ball, so we're going to be doing a best ball show here soon. We got a lot of stuff coming down the pipe, and then in season, you guys know what we do. So stick here with us as always. We thank you guys. We love y'all, and we'll talk to you next week.